As someone who grew up as mostly a GameCube kid, the 4 games that I would replay the most were Pac-Man World 2, Luigi's Mansion, Super Mario Sunshine, and Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness, in no particular order. They were my comfort games that were so easy to pick up and play at the most casual level possible, so when games from this generation getting remade became more common, I always hoped at least one of these 4 games would get remade. Then my prayers were finally answered in July 2025.
Pac-Man World 2, Repack!
Yeah! Yeah!
Although Pac-Man World 1 got its own repack back in 2022, that was one of those games I didn't grow up with, as I never got around to owning it on Game Boy Advance and never owned a PlayStation 1 at the time. Regardless, that remake's existence felt like it greatly increased the chances of Pac-Man World 2 getting its own remake even before the announcement. I just didn't think it would happen so soon. But Pac-Man World 2 felt like it was unanimously the most popular of the trilogy. World 1 was, very close, but World 2 still edged it out a bit. If your favorite is World 3, God bless your soul. If that game gets remade, they're gonna need to overhaul a lot of how that game worked to make it enjoyable for me. But that's for another video, perhaps. Even though the original World 2 was one of my favorite comfort games, there were still a lot of aspects I was hoping to be improved on if it were to get remade. All the water levels being auto-scrollers was super boring. The camera controls were an absolute nightmare. Too many collectibles for almost no payoff, and a lack of boss variety. Those were issues I know for a fact many others who played the original had too. And even just off the early trailers of this game, they were making it very clear that these issues would be addressed. The camera thing was a bit hard to tell from the trailers, however, with how much technology has improved over the past 20 years since the original released, it felt like a safe assumption the camera would be, proper 360 almost all the time. Which I can confirm after playing it, that it is. The only instances where it isn't is in levels like Avalanche Alley, since that level's entire gimmick is running towards the screen as opposed to away from it like usual. Then the costumes features, which are unlockable if you complete certain objectives by the end of each level, where collecting all the fruit is almost always a requirement for one of the 3 challenges for a costume. Not only that, but while you're going through a level, you'll get a proper tally on how many fruits total you need. So if you need to backtrack for a fruit, this tally helps to know when you might need to. Whereas the original, you didn't know exactly how much of each fruit there was until the level was done. Fruits and flying boxes were always such a pain in the ass to collect in the original too, especially in the ice and lava levels. You ever watch YouTube videos of people trying to 100% ice river run? I get annoyed for them because of how painful it looks trying to, get some of those. That's why I just never bothered myself when I did replays of that game. Other than, bragging rights and a slight ego boost, there was simply not enough incentive for me to get them all. Whereas now, any fruit that's in a box will automatically magnetize onto Pac-Man even if the box is floating in an awkward spot. This was such a good quality of life change that not only makes collecting fruits less of a pain, but actually gives a desire to do it more than previously because the costumes the game offers are actually, pretty good looking. The costumes are entirely cosmetic though, so it's understandable if some folks still don't believe that's enough to warrant collecting all the fruit. Repack does feel intentionally designed in a way where the developers want you to play through these levels at least twice, since not all missions are the same. Sometimes you'll need to break every crate or defeat every enemy as one of the 3 costume requirements, and you may not realize this until you beat the level for the first time. Plus, doing a time trial run of the level is just as common of a requirement as collecting the fruit. Even if this isn't my cup of tea to wanna get done right away for every single level, I still appreciate how the devs at least gave some kind of incentive to engage with the collectibles more this time around. One thing they didn't do that I wish they could have is not saving the collectibles that you already collected. What I mean by that is, if you already collected like 5 out of 7 cherries while playing through a level, you'll still have 5 cherries if you die in the same level and respawn. But if you complete the level with only 5 out of 7 cherries, then go back to that same level later to collect all the fruit counters will be reset back to 0. So you have to get all the fruit in one run of that level, which is still fine for the most part, I suppose. Maybe 2D Mario games have spoiled me in that regard, since collecting star coins would always be saved. I don't know. Voice acting is back, and that was something I definitely didn't expect, since Pac-Man World 3 was the only one to be fully voice acted of the trilogy. But voice acting was the least of that game's issues. Martin T. Sherman, who provided Pac-Man's voice in World 3, would return to voice him in World 2 Repack, and his performance was solid. I will admit, hearing Pac-Man talk for the first time in World 3 was weird, because he always gave off the silent protagonist vibe to me, but Martin's delivery really grew on me over time, so I was curious to see how it would play out in this game.
Waka 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 waka.
Yeah, this is the best game ever. Like I said, all the characters were voice acted this time around, and I'm glad there was consistency there, because original World 2 had some voice acting with characters like Spooky, Professor Pac, and the 4 ghosts, kind of. It was just more text box dialogue than voice acting overall. One thing I found weird about what Repack did here, with the cutscenes at least, is whenever boss fight cutscenes happened, there was complete silence. Like, only talking with no background music whatsoever.
Aha! I spy my first golden fruit. All right, Clyde, the jig is up. How about handing over that fruit? Pac-Man?
I can't imagine why this was done, because other cutscenes like the main opening one where Spooky emerges from the tree still had music and sound effects in the background while he was talking, so the argument of the game couldn't handle it isn't possible to stand on since other cutscenes showed otherwise. The original game lacked voice acting from the ghosts whenever they did talk to Pac-Man after taking a certain amount of damage in their boss fights, but those still had background music. This is a minor inconvenience at most. I just think it was weird that boss battles of all things were doing this when more minor cutscenes didn't. Soundtrack is still great too. Certain song remixes always seem to be a big point of discourse with video game remakes in general on if the new ones sound better or worse than the OG. In Repack's case, the tracks don't really change a whole lot. A lot of instruments used in the original tracks are the same too, so if you like the first game's soundtrack, this one should be music to your ears as well. With how bare bones certain remakes have been in the past, I honestly did not expect a Repack of all things to add new enemies, yet here we are. Albeit the ones I've seen have pretty basic functions, like the walking barrels for the first area or the bear cubs that can fire bombs at you now, but it's still new content that makes the game feel fresher than it did. When it comes to my mindset on game remakes, there either needs to be enough new or positive changes with the game's contents for me to spend my money on it when I can, emulate the original for free if I wanted. Same goes with the bosses. As I briefly mentioned earlier, myself and everyone always thought it was weird how only Clyde got a unique robot to pilot when the other three piloted the same robot ghost with a different coat of paint. Even the way those three bosses attacked were almost identical in patterns, only with the intensity of those attacks increasing, but no new actual attacks from each one. Blinky was actually hard, which I liked for a game that was relatively easy before this. The only time the original felt hard before this point was dying to leaps of faith because of the poor camera controls, which didn't even feel like true difficulty since I'm just being trolled by the engine at that point. While Inky and Pinky could just be turbo-cheesed with the rev roll and defeated in less than a minute. Repack gave all of them different robots and you actually had to fight around everyone except Blinky and Clyde. Inky had the owl that would throw metal wings in a way where you needed to keep moving to not get hit, or Pinky's polar bear with the bombs and spin attack. The bosses were still pretty easy even with their golden fruit power boosted second phases, but I was kind of expecting that, as again, the original wasn't very hard in my opinion. So I went into this game expecting a tame difficulty experience since aspects like the camera, ice physics, and general controls would be improved upon. So far, one of the only times I've died was during platforming sections using the metal ball power-up, as now the power-up works more to match its name, where Pac-Man falls faster in midair because he's heavier, which I understand why they do it, but when it came to levels like Butane Pain in the forest, which now had little gaps to land on for the fire sections, I didn't really see a point in using the metal ball there since I'd already gotten used to Pac-Man's floatiness playing for about an hour prior to arriving that level. On the topic of power-ups, I really liked what they've done with them in Repack. The Shrink Ball power was one that got almost no usage in the original, appearing in only 2 levels, but I'm not even done with the game yet and it's already appeared more than twice, so that's dope. The Pack Pellet Throw is also back, which was in both the first world, the repacked version of it, and an ability many wished would have returned in 2 and 3, yet never did. Not gonna lie, while the inclusion is cool, I really haven't been using this ability all that much. Since you can't move while throwing a pellet, the convenience factor isn't the same as just butt bouncing or grounded kick flipping an enemy, since both of those can get done in motion and don't halt my momentum. And I keep forgetting the flutter kick ability even exists, which is my own fault, but I'm just not used to Pac-Man of all characters having an ability like that, even if it was in the first repack. One of the biggest changes I've noticed is the way the game handles Pac Village. The original World 2 treated Pac Village sort of like a hub area, but it didn't feel complete in a sense. The lack of NPCs to talk to, as well as the continent including only the arcade games and the concept art museum. Repack gave it a much needed upgrade, as now Pac Village had branching paths leading to each new area of the world. With the more golden fruits collected, the more NPCs will begin to appear, as well as more fruit to collect in the village. By extension, this change to Pac Village gave Wormwood, the Ghost Island tree, a more pivotal role in the game's story. Even though he was talked up to be, the big evil brother of the golden fruit tree, he was confined to a single level with no kind of influence until you got to the level in question. Whereas Repack has his poisonous roots spreading all through Pac Village because the golden fruits are gone, making him actually feel more like a proper antagonist as opposed to a one-off one that had no presence until the very end of the game in the original. There's also the statue feature, which is nice. You can kind of customize Pac Village to your own unique liking. And I cannot get over how much better the water levels are. As someone who isn't super big on water levels and platformers that have a lot of mobility options, it can feel annoying when these levels take away pretty much everything you're used to. But the option to freely roam really helps a lot. The original went about the water levels in the worst way possible. It's the most autopilot, snooze fest gameplay ever. Visuals wise, I can't complain much at all. The volcano levels in particular look a lot better this time around for me, but I'm not too huge on Ghost Island's look. Like, graphically it's fine, but I really like the whole twilight lighting the original had going on, where lanterns were the only source of light, the brown sludgy water and foggy air that made it a little tough to see what was up ahead. really added to the eeriness of the island. Repack's take on Ghost Island went with more standard dark lighting where you can kind of see everything around you and a purple poison pond. The new levels themselves are more engaging gameplay-wise since the platforming was a bit tougher and more varied. It just didn't look quite as good as the previous Ghost Island iteration for me. Also, even though this doesn't have anything to do with the game's content specifically, it does suck like how many other IPs that aren't owned by Nintendo. The Switch 2 version of this game is confined to a game keycard, so physical collectors are unfortunately getting shafted with this game. Even still, the game being priced at $30 is still a win in my book, considering the market conditions us consumers are dealing with in the industry right now. Many AAA titles are becoming more expensive by the minute, so I feel like if you're someone who mostly plays AAA titles, now is a better time than any to play some games outside that AAA realm. Also, Spooky says the H word, ooh.
And when that day comes, there'll be hell to pay!
I still haven't gotten Sonic Cross Worlds Racing yet, but I'm not gonna lie, Pac-Man being in that game is tempting me. Granted, I am a bit burnt out on racing games in general right now. That Sonic DLC for Repack will hopefully be solid. Shame it's only one stage though, but maybe they'll add more. If I had to give one major gripe to World 2 Repack, it's the police officer lost all his aura at the end. Look at how ballistic this guy was going before. Where's your joy and whimsy, dude? What happened to it?